I'm mostly making this video for Once Forgiven, Now Free, but it is applicable to anyone who wants to make similar arguments about atheism and morality. I'll do another video on that topic sometime soon, but first I wanted to tackle this moral progress question. You see, Once Forgiven, Now Free has basically defined it as Jesus, or pleasing Jesus, is the standard for moral behaviour. Atheists don't believe in Jesus and consequently don't have that standard, and you can't have progress without having a standard. Though there's questions in all of this, it's actually that last bit I wanted to challenge first. You can in fact have progress without a standard. It just depends what type of standard that you use and what type of progress that you have. If I was to get a new job and be earning $10,000 a year more, it would be progress. It would be an improvement in my career. However, it wouldn't be progress towards a standard. I don't have a fixed amount I wanted to be earning. There's two types of standards you can apply. You can either have an objective one, which is what you claim, or you can have an absolute one, which is what you've actually provided. An absolute one is something like a percentage where you have a fixed amount you have to reach, but anything that gives you a clear counter that you can define a difference is a valid standard. You failed to provide an actual objective standard, so let me. Doing harm is wrong. The first question is going to be, of course, why is it wrong? What's wrong? What makes it wrong? And so on. But that's actually kind of missing the point. In my worldview specifically, it's not about putting a moral judgment on doing harm so much as defining wrong. Wrong is doing harm. Without harm, there is no moral wrong. It's not hard to see where this would have come from either. It would have been a prohibition against small groups and families from being harmed by their members that protected them from something that would have really lowered their chances of survival. And that, to me, is where you can actually get a useful definition of harm. It actually has nothing to do with Jesus, that's for sure. And it has nothing to do even with what you do. You see, we know not to harm our own people. We know not to kill our own people or enslave them or rape them. What matters and what makes moral progress is when you expand our people to include more and more people. In fact, not even just people. We now care about harm to the environment, and we care about harm to animals that we didn't care about once before, and that's moral progress. I find it totally incomprehensible that you would choose this issue, this slavery issue, as something that an atheist couldn't believe in as moral progress. Of course it was moral progress. A great deal of harm was being done to a group of people on the basis of their race. The abolition of this was unquestionably moral progress. But your own Bible, the wellspring of your morality, actively condones and even encourages it. There are instructions given in how to buy and how to treat slaves, beating being part of it. Even the New Testament, that's supposed to be morally superior, at least condones, if not encourages it. The entire Philemon, for example, is Paul telling a slave to go back to his rightful master, or specifically telling the master to take him back. So realistically, it's actually your moral system that doesn't see any benefit in the abolition of slavery, because your moral system, including Jesus, doesn't actively prescribe it anywhere where mine does. Just going back to the example of Jesus, you claim that he's an objective standard. I claim he's an absolute standard, but I'm going to take it a step further and say he's an absolutely useless standard. You see, you don't actually know what Jesus thought of anything or felt about anything. You have very, very little concept of his moral guidance. You don't know what Jesus' views are on abortion, on stem cell research. You don't know Jesus' views on homosexuality. Anyone who claims they do is just making up stuff to justify their own basic prejudices and their own preconceived ideas. You see, you've said that the question that you ask yourself is essentially, what would Jesus do? But that's a question, not an answer, and you still have to find a way to find yourself an answer. I suspect you use the same answer I do. What doesn't cause harm? There's a last point that I wanted to bring up because you've done this in so many videos now. You often will state that an atheist has to believe this or this because they're essentially trapped by your infallible logic. But your infallible logic is usually rubbish and usually is based on your own ignorance of someone else's worldview. We're not actually trapped by your ignorance, and your ignorance doesn't define our views or our opinions, our attitudes or our thoughts. If you wanted to know something, instead of absurd challenges about how we justify this or how we explain that, just try asking. We will always answer, and we'll always answer as clearly and politely as we can, or at least some of us will. If you wanted to know, don't assume our worldview and don't assume our answers, and just find out.